and welcome back to the For Fun of Knit podcast. I am Linda, your host for the next hour and a bit. Yeah, it's going to be a long one. Anyway, grab whatever you're having as a beverage, your knitting project, and I hope to keep you company as I review with you some of my finished objects, some whips, some acquisitions. My friends and I did a little teeny weeny bit of a yarn crawl, which I want to share with you. And all that wonderful yarny goodness. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome. If you are returning, you know the drill. Let's get started. Okay, so a little different this time. I actually would like to just comment or review a few comments that I got from the last podcast. So thank you so much for all your wonderful comments. And wow, were there ever a lot of tips and helpful hints? Everything from my socks to yoke knitting. It was wonderful. So I just wanted to actually review a few of the things and just sort of circle around on a couple of the topics from the last video. So I know I said in the last video that I would never knit with boucle again, because I have to say I love my Terramin sweater from Beth McDonald Stone, but knitting with the boucle was not enjoyable for me. And then I ended up watching Amanda from Sweet Skein of Mine's podcast, and she had done the Caitlin Hunter Reluctant Homeschooler cardigan, which I've made before, but she did it holding two strands of boucle together. I loved it. I'm so tempted. Two strands of boucle could get pretty costly for an entire cardigan, but I also am still not over the trauma of knitting with boucle from my last sweater. But it did make me realize that there are projects that sometimes you want the product, and so the knit might not be your most favorite knit, but the end product is what you're gonna go for. So as a process knitter myself, that's a big leap for me, but honestly, I really did like the wearability that she was expressing in that cardigan. So if you haven't seen her episode on that, take a look. Amanda from Sweet Skein of Mine, she's a dyer out of New Brunswick, I do believe, and awesome. Anyway, so I might knit something more with boucle. Anyway, some of the tips. So a couple of videos, and I will list some of the video recommendations in the show notes below because I think they're very much worth looking at. So Janess shared about split hems. There's an Olga Putano Designs tutorial on split hems. I've watched it. I'm going to use that split hem technique. I've explained how I do a split hem, and I like to just have some extra fabric to overlap so that you don't get this V shape here. You get a nice overlapped fabric. But Janess shared Olga Putano's Designs video on split hems. I'll list it below. Joanne, this is all about my Tamarin sweater and how I'm really worried. I haven't washed it yet, still haven't washed it. Because I dyed some of that yarn myself and I don't know what I'm doing, I'm afraid that dark red is going to leak. So Joanne absolutely recommended, and this is a brilliant idea, rewashing the swatch. Okay, I have to laugh. And my friends are probably listening to this laughing as I say this because Joanna didn't do a swatch. So I'm thinking, yes, if you had done a swatch, you could actually rewash your swatch and then see if that bled. But next best thing, because I didn't swatch, and I normally don't swatch, is I could actually cut off a little bit of yarn of each of the colors and stick them in jars of water with a little bit of soap, shake them around a bit and see if any of it bleeds. I think, so Joanne, thank you for that. Even though I didn't swatch, I thought that actually was probably a very good suggestion before I dunked my whole sweater. So thank you for that. Paula commented regarding my comment about my necklines tend to be too big on a lot of my yoke sweaters in particular, whether it's a raglan yoke or just a circular yoke. And so she recommends casting on 1 or 2 sizes smaller, and that's absolutely valid, and I have started doing that. So Paula, thank you. Charlotte, I'm so excited. I found your podcast. I didn't realize you were a podcaster, which is Knitting with Trillmore. Knitting with Trillmore, Charlotte said choosing the actual size of your yoke is very important, but if you choose your upper bust versus your full bust, when it comes to choosing your yoke size, be aware you might be changing the depth of your yoke. So this made me think a lot, and I'll talk about it when I'm talking about one of my works in progress. Because the depth of the yoke absolutely is different from one size to another. I mean, the designer takes that into account. So if you're choosing your upper bust measurement, which is smaller than your full bust, is it going to impact the depth of the yoke? So as I started looking at some of the patterns I've purchased in the past, what I've realized is not all of the designers provide a yoke depth in their schematic. So if you're a designer, could you please add a yoke depth in your schematic for each size? That would be super helpful. Some of them do have it. I just can't remember which patterns, but I know I've seen it. But I don't think that's the norm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if that's the norm. So, okay. A couple of tutorials on yoke depth. Really started digging into this. Suzanne Bryan has a really good tutorial on how to measure for a whole sweater, but it goes into a lot of depth on how to measure for the top of your sweater, your shoulders, your armpits, the bust, the neck, all of that. So I'll put that down below. Knitted Wishes had a podcast or a tutorial on how to try on your yoke as you're knitting it and what to look for. I thought that was super helpful. Short little tutorial, very helpful. And Knitting the Stash, Melissa from Knitting the Stash actually has a tutorial on how to adjust, things to consider, and different ways that you could possibly adjust the depth of your yoke. She talks about row gauge, adding and decreasing rows, and extracting or expanding the actual pattern. So I'll include all of those links below so that you can look at that. I had a lot of suggestions and tips regarding my sock knitting. Because I have a very deep arch, I'm always trying to adjust for that tightness between my heel and my arch. So I guess it's called your instep. Yeah, I think it's called your instep. So I'll include all of the videos below that I looked at, and they were all Roxanne Richardson for the most part. But when I get to the actual sock knitting part, I will talk to you about the tips that people, the comments from the first video or from the last video. So thank you for that. That was a lot of fun to read all those comments, and I learned a ton. Learned a ton. So that is a great source, and I have to say I also learn a ton from my knitting group. And not in this episode, but in my next one, I'm going to share some of the tips that my knitting group has actually been sharing with me, which I think is really going to elevate the quality of the garments that I'm actually knitting. So stay tuned for that. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, because then you're going to want to see that one. But so today I've got some finished objects. What else was I going to go through? I've got a few notes because I can't remember anything anymore. That's just the way I am, and I don't know where I wrote it. Finished objects, whips. I've got a couple videos from a little yarn tour that we did. I've got some acquisitions, and I'm going to talk about a few of the next projects that I'm going to be casting on. Because I have cast-on-itis. I do. I've been casting on the world right now, and I don't see that stopping because we all know that knitting is therapy and it's stress management, and it's all perfect. It's all beautiful. So without further ado, let's get to finished object. So my very first finished object, as you might guess, is what I am wearing, which is Doodles by Yumiko Alexander. So this is Doodles. Let me tell you first a little bit about Doodles, and then I'll model it for you. But Doodles is, and I just want to show it to you. So look at Doodles. Doodles is a boxy, very airy and light, very artistic, I'm going to say, garment. It's knit flat and then you sew, but a minimal amount of sewing is required. I would consider this an easy pattern, so super beginner friendly. It's in a DK weight. The pattern calls for a DK weight. It calls for 6mm needles, a US 10. It comes in 4 sizes, from a 45-inch bust to a 57-inch bust. But as you can see, it is super oversized. And you require anywhere from 1,000 to 1,700 yards. So the pattern was actually knit, and Yumiko Alexander is actually Dando yarns. And the actual yarn that was used in the sample was 76% silk, 24% cotton, and DK. So now let me tell you about some of the decisions I made when I knit this. First of all, I did not have that yarn. So I always go to my stash, or not always, but in this case I went to my stash. What did I feel like knitting with? Well, I felt like knitting with this particular yarn, which, excuse me for a second, I will grab it for you, which is Friends Cotton Silk. This is actually a worsted weight yarn, and this is from Hobby Yarns. As I've said before, I'm experimenting with, a little bit more cost-effective yarns, and I have to say, love this. Thoroughly enjoyed knitting with it. This is the reverse mix. This is 70% silk, 70% cotton, 30% silk. So it's the reverse, and it's also a heavier weight. So that was decision number 1 I made. Decision number 2 was the fiber content was different. Decision number 3 that I made was I was going to knit the size 2. It suggests having, I do believe, 10 inches, of positive ease. So I knit the size smaller because I was using a thicker yarn. So I ended up knitting size 2. And you can see there is lots of positive ease in this puppy. I stuck with the 6mm or US 10 needles. I did not change that at all. So mine, I'm going to model it for you. I love this. This yarn, and I'm going to knit this pattern again, and I'll tell you why as well. But this is the Doodle. So let me just stand back. Let me move my chair here. So this is the Doodles. As you can see, it is a boxy. It is 2 rectangles, literally 2 rectangles that you then seam together. And what I love about this is I love the pattern. I love how easy it was, seamed up the sides. I like the fact that it comes up in the middle, and because it's a rectangle, it hangs lower on the sides. It is super light and airy. This fabric, you do not actually have to wear anything underneath it. It is not see-through. It is knit thick and thin. So you are knitting, holding 2 strands and then dropping a strand and knitting with 1 strand. And these sections here, I've tried it on without a t-shirt underneath, and you see a little shading difference, but not too much. So it is absolutely appropriate to wear with just a bra when you're using this yarn. Now, if I were to knit this again, and I am going to knit this again, I want to knit one made out of probably a linen. So probably a DK weight linen. And I think the reason I want to reknit it, this I'm going to get a ton of wear out of. just because of the weight of this yarn, and there's no wool in it, but there is some silk, it was warm enough. It's warm enough for a cool spring knit if you're just wearing short sleeves. This keeps you nice and cozy on those cooler spring days. I think without a t-shirt underneath it, it would be fine for summer. I think the worsted weight yarn is just going to be too warm for the hot, hot summer. So I'd like to do it in a DK linen. I think it would, I like the drape of this, don't get me wrong. I think this is extremely comfortable. It's just a lovely, lovely knit. I think the drape would be even more with a DK weight silk or DK weight linen. You wouldn't get the little, I get a little bit of flaring on the sleeves. So you can see sort of a little bell happening on the sleeves. And I think that would go away if the drape was a little bit different. I would also, let me just push back here. I would also, I hope you can see this. See, it comes up a little bit in the back. I don't mind that. But I think what I would do next time is add short rows right in this section here to drop the back a little bit. I don't need short rows for the neck area. So I don't need to drop, it is a boat neck design, but it sits so nicely, it hangs, it doesn't, I can't stand anything unless it's actually a crew neck sweater, but I can't stand things sitting against my Adam's apple. That bothers me. So I was worried about the boat neck aspect of this design. Doesn't turn out to be that way at all. It drapes so nicely, it hangs nicely in front. And all the pictures that I saw on Ravelry did the same. Nobody was sitting with the sweater right up here like a straight across stiff boat neck. So it works really well. But I would do some short row somewhere in the back, even maybe at the bottom, depending on how that works, just to drop the back of it a little bit. So note to self, that's what I will do next time. But this, highly recommend cotton silk. Friends Cotton Silk from Hobby Yarns. Can't remember how much I spent. I think I talked about it in my last video, but very, an economical yarn and fun to knit. Great for summer knits. Love it. I would knit with that again. So there you go. So that was finished object number 1. Finished object number 2 are my Rhinebeck Roomie socks. Now this is a pattern by Linton of the Crazy Sock Lady. Everybody knows Crazy Sock Lady. And this is her Rhinebeck Roomie design. It was so much fun to knit. I really do like a 4 or 5 row stitch pattern that is so memorable. This is not lace. It is just purls and knits and slips. And it is so easy. And the yarn that I used was Sock NATO from Ancient Arts. So this is Ancient Arts. If you haven't seen their logo before, Canadian dyer out of Alberta. Love them, love them, love them. Their Sock NATO base is 80% merino, 20% nylon. And this is in their Sweet Tannenbaum colorway. Now, this is not a colorway I would normally buy just as a one skein. But every December, Ancient Arts launches the 12 Days of Christmas yarns. They have a different yarn every day for 12 days, and I always buy them. That is one of my Christmas gifts to myself. I love it. I have so much fun with it, and this is one of those skeins. So I can't remember which day it was, but this is one of those skeins. And I just paired it with some purple for the toes because I don't know that you're going to be able to see this, but in here, there are little specks of purple. What else is in there? Purple, blue, lime green. Very hard to see because they're very tiny. Does it show anywhere? Does that one show a little bit more where you can see some of the speckles? Oh, that might show it. But anyway, there's more purple than anything else, so I did it with purple toes. Now, I always use 2.25 millimeter needles, 64 stitches, and I am always fighting to make sure that I have enough depth in my instep. So in the last video, I talked about what I was doing. And what I did is I actually moved 4 stitches in total, but 2 from this side and 2 from the other side of the front stitches to the back heel when I started the gusset. Then I knit the gusset, and I didn't do 16 repeats, I did 20. So that was, what is that for? 8 extra rows. So I did 8 extra rows or 4 slip stitches. So I end up not only having a wider gusset, but I also have a longer one. What that means is when you do the heel flap and now start your decreases to create this section, you have to do a lot more decrease rounds, which elongates this section here, this triangle here. And I was worried it might make my sock look funny, but it's not bad. It turned out okay. It doesn't look too odd. They fit like a dream. They fit like a dream. Worked for me. What I did notice is I think my heel flap is a little too long. I don't think I needed to do 8 extra rows. I could have probably done just 4, but then I lose a little bit of width. So I'm going to keep trying it. I'm going to keep testing and see how that works. But now I just wanted to share with you some of the comments that I got regarding sock knitting, because these were quite interesting. So thank you to all you sock knitters out there. So Roxanne Richardson by far was the recommended video tutorial person for socks, but there were some other ones that I wanted to share as well. Where were they? Okay, so Adele recommended that do extra, what did Adele recommend? Just adding extra rows in the gusset, which means you'll have extra decreases, which will lengthen the gusset. Allie recommended the Morse heel, M-O-R-S. So the Morse heel, that is actually, it's a tutorial from Inga of Knitting Traditions. So I haven't taken a look at that particular video. So if anybody has seen that Morse heel, apparently it is roomier. So Allie, thank you very much. I have yet to check that out. But Roxanne Richardson had a couple videos. One was customizing the heel flap, which I did include in my notes, I do believe. She has a whole tutorial on heel flap and gusset modifications, how to measure for your sock, and including your ankle bone, right? So very important, your ankle bone to the floor, which was a huge piece that I didn't understand. But anyway, so Roxanne Richardson, I'll include all those videos below. But what were some of the comments? Jennifer recommended increasing the stitch count for a short row heel on the last row before starting the heel. So I didn't do a short row heel. I did a heel flap and gusset, but that's very valid, and I've done that in the past too. When you do the short row heel, in the row before you start your heel, add some extra stitches. And quite a few of you have made the same recommendation. For me, when I did that, it worked, absolutely. But what I ended up having was this sock and then this heel that came sort of like a squid, and then the leg of my sock. It just looked really weird when my sock was not on my foot. And maybe I shouldn't be concerned about what my socks look like in the cupboard, in my drawer, but they just looked weird. It did fit well though, I have to say that. Dorothy had a good question. She was watching and she noticed that I did 2 things. I moved stitches from the front to the back, then did the heel gusset and made the heel gusset longer. And she said, how are you going to know, Linda, which one is going to work? Like which part of that system you've got going is actually giving you the benefit? Very valid point, Dorothy. So I'm going to keep testing, and maybe in my next couple of socks, one I will just move the stitches and the other ones I'll just increase the length of the gusset, because that's a very good point. Dell provided, thank you Dell for this, and if anybody wants to look into the notes, Dell, and I will include this in my notes below as well, provided her formula for actually doing the increases so that you get, and this is in a heel flap and gusset sock, so that you get a better fit. So I will include it. She gave me the whole pattern. Knit 2, knit front back, knit 1, knit front back. So I've got it all here, and I'll include it below for anyone who's interested. But Dell, I'm going to try that. Thank you for that. So those were some of the wonderful comments I got about sock knitting. So thank you, everybody. That was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So that was it for my finished objects. And now what I would like to do is talk about my works in progress. So what I thought might be fun is I'm going to do a wardrobe change, because I think it would be fun to talk about my works in progress while I'm wearing them, if they're in a state where I can wear them. So the first one up is my Kevat. Okay, so this is a much more fun way of talking about a work in progress. At least I think so. So this is my Kevat by Caitlin Hunter, and I do have some notes. So this is, get my string out of the way. This is a top-down circular yoke color work, as you can see, tee. It is designed for sport weight yarn, is the way the pattern's written. The main color that you will need is anywhere from 540 yards or 490 meters all the way to almost 1100 yards for the largest size, or 980 meters. It comes in 10 different sizes, from a 36-inch bust to a 72-inch bust, or a 91 centimeter to 183 centimeters. The needles that are recommended are 3.25 millimeter for the ribbing and the sleeves, or like just basically the ribbing, or a US 3. And then for the body and the color work, they're recommending 3.5. If you're really tight with your color work, you might want to go up to a 4. But that's the recommendation. And the recommendation is also for 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. So my measurements, I'm a 40 bust, basically 38 upper bust. And these are the decisions that I made in my Kevat. So far, anyway. So at the start, I wanted to choose the color. So my color inspiration, and I'll show a picture here, was off of Ravelry, and it was Andrea's version of the Kevat. And I literally, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I wanted to copy it. So I knew I had some yarn in my stash that I showed you last time, which is the Kobu. Where is my bag? Oh, which is the Kobu from Lion Brand, which is cotton bamboo, which is, so my first decision was the color. I wanted to do it in the coffee and cream, sort of a cafe latte kind of colorway. And I used this Kobu, which is a cotton rayon bamboo, and 100% linen for the color work. Undyed linen in a sport. This is in a fingering weight. I apologize. And I held it double. So my yarn color and my yarn choice were decisions that I made. The actual pattern is knit in a merino, where I chose to knit it in plant-based. So that also affects, obviously, the garment, the fabric, the actual fabric and the stretch that the garment is going to have. I also chose a DK yarn versus a fingering weight yarn. So some decisions that I make. But I went up a needle size to account for the bigger yarn. What else did I do? It recommended 6 to 8 inches of positive ease. I prefer something It's not that I prefer, that's the wrong way, because I love my oversized sweaters. I knit them, wear them all the time. But this one in particular, I didn't want it to be super gapey. So I only wanted around 4 inches of positive ease. That was a decision that I made. And so that led to my size choice. So my size choice, if I only wanted 4 inches of positive ease, I should have done the size 3, which was a 44-inch bust. I ended up knitting size 4 because, no, is that right? No. I ended up knitting size 3 because it was a 44-inch bust, but because I was using a larger needle and thicker yarn, I figured it would give me that positive ease. Yay. I knew there was a reason in there. So I chose size 3. I chose size 3. I didn't want a big neck, so I actually, and to the previous viewer's comment, I actually cast on for the smallest size, which was only 124 stitches. And then in the very next row of ribbing, get my hair out of the way, in the very next row of knitting, I increased to get the right size for size 3. Now, it only made like an inch and a half difference, and it doesn't sound like it's a lot, but it's exponential. So those extra stitches here, while they only added like an inch wider, like the neck for the size 1 and the neck for size 3 are only like an inch and a half wider. That doesn't sound like a lot, but these extra stitches, as you increase stitches all the way down, obviously, as we knitters know, you will just have that many more increases in the pattern that just exponentially grows your yoke. So it was important for me to get to the size 3 stitch count. That's what I'm trying to get at. So far, I've got markers along the side here, so I remember to tell you what I didn't tell you the first time I talked about this sweater. So right here, there is a little cable detail right here, and I misread the pattern. It is a 1x1 cable. And I did a 2x2 cable. So my cabling was wrong, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's starting to pull. I wonder if it was going to be too tight because there's not as much give in the cable as the pattern required. Doesn't seem to be making any difference from a fit standpoint. Second thing I didn't mention the last time I talked about this sweater was using linen in color work, 0 stretch, number 1. So you really do need to pay attention to your tension. But 2, I'm doing the full bobble version. Like there are bobbles everywhere. I got bobbles. Okay, linen bobbles very well, but it has no give. No give. So this took me a couple of tries to get this right. I was starting on the bobbles. I had to undo my bobbles and go back. I don't think I mentioned this in the last video. Go back to the row previous. And in the pattern where the stitch was gonna be a bobble in the next row, that stitch I had to leave a float of a good inch and a half. So every time I came to a stitch in the previous row and that stitch was going to be the bobble in the next row, I had to leave an inch and a half float. Why? Because when you get to the bobbles and you're knitting 5 times into the same stitch, it uses up all that yarn and there's no give. So if you're using a merino, there's some give, like your color work, you can still maintain the tension properly if you're a little bit short. Not with linen. Absolutely, there's no give. The previous row, you've got to make super long floats in those stitches that are going to be bobble stitches. Wanted to highlight that. So that was the other thing. The next thing is in the last video, I said, oh yeah, some of my friends have had to add an extra, design, a repeat in the yoke because it wasn't deep enough, but I'll be okay. Wrong. I was not okay. I separated for the sleeves, did the first repeat of the body pattern, tried it on. Way too tight in the underarm. Way too tight. It was like right up here. So I did what all my besties did. And I added a shorter version of this. A shorter version of this nice arrow pattern without the bobbles right along the bust line. Because it was just the right amount. I just needed over an inch. And between that motif and the two rows on the top and bottom of purling, that added enough depth so that my yoke sits. Now this is pre-blocked. This is cotton, rayon, and linen. I do expect it to relax a little bit. If anything, it's going to be super drapey, which is yay. I don't think it's going to grow this way. I think it might grow lengthwise a little bit because as you wear cotton, it tends to sort of give. But because part of it's bamboo and part of it's linen, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. But anyway, got to the body of it and I'm doing the full bobble version. So get my glasses out of the way. Full bobble version. And I am absolutely loving this pattern. It is absolutely, and I'm getting the right amount of ease that I wanted for this top. So this top is actually our flock tee. And it's funny, sorry, Jackie, it's funny, not funny, because one of my knitting besties knit the Kevat but did long sleeves just because she used a woollier wool. And we were all going to wear it, in the morning. And if it got too hot, we'd bring a change of clothes as always. And then Flock came out and said it had, their theme knit along for the summer is a short sleeve tee. Any tee you wanted, but it had to be short sleeved. And so Jackie's knitting another one, which will be beautiful. But this is my version of Caitlin Hunter's Kevat, and I'm absolutely loving it. It is a fun knit. I am almost finished. I am on repeat 1, 2, 3. I'm almost finished repeat 4. I'm going to do a 5th repeat and then the ribbing. So it's going to be not long. It's going to be cropped. It's for over skirts. It's not cropped, but it'll be right at my hip bones, which is nice. And then honestly, the sleeves, I have got this lovely extra design motif, and I am just going to go straight and do the ribbing right from there because I do like this shorter sleeve. So liking it, loving it. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So that is my Kevat. So now let's go on to my next whip, which I am so excited to share. It's another Caitlin Hunter pattern. But this was a complete, absolutely unplanned, spontaneous cast on that I am absolutely in love with now, and it is taking all of my attention, which is why this is not finished yet. I'm so close to finishing this. I just have to finish. But my next whip is taking all of my knitting love. I am back. And this is another Caitlin Hunter pattern that I've had in my library for a long time. And I always envisioned making this sweater in the color that was the photo inspiration, which I'll put over here, or the advertised photo in a beautiful cinnamon color. This is Caitlin Hunter's Halu. And I just cast it on, and this is a funny story. First of all, just take a moment. Take a moment. And how pretty is this? Like, how pretty is this? It's going to be huge. I can already tell that. It's going to be huge. But I'm loving this. The funny thing about this sweater is I had no intentions of casting it on now. It's summer, for crumb's sakes. This is going to be a winter sweater. But I was doing a mini de-stash with my knitting friends, and I had brought some yarn over to one of their homes. thinking that, because they asked me to. So I brought some yarns over because I wasn't totally enamored with them, or, they weren't exciting me at the time. And this is actually 2 yarns. This is Whole Super Soft in the color Plaster. Kelly and Noelle, yes, this is because of you. So talk about enabling. It's all your fault. But anyway, I bought this because of Knit Chat Cafe, and Kelly was knitting in plaster, and I paired it with Knitting for Olive Silk Mohair in the colorway Ballerina. And those two together, almost a beautiful, perfect match. I had them in my stash. This one I was going to destash. And as I'm putting the yarn out, thinking that, somebody might be interested in, because we all love pink. Somebody might be interested in it. Nobody was taking it. I'm like, I really like that. I don't know if I want to actually destash that. Oh, please, nobody choose that yarn. And so as soon as I got it home, that was it. I put these two together and I thought, okay, what can I make with this? And I checked through my library of all of the yarns of patterns that I had already, and the Halu stood out for me completely. So I am on a Caitlin Hunter kick apparently, and a bobble kick, because this pattern has a ton of bobbles. So let me tell you a little bit about the pattern. So again, Halu by Caitlin Hunter. Right now there's about 445 projects, in case you're curious. Again, very size inclusive, 10 different sizes ranging from bust size 63 inches to 68 3/4 inches, and it is meant to be an oversized fit. So that's also 83 centimeters to 175 centimeters. It is top down. It is, I don't know what they call this. Is this contiguous? Is this contiguous? Because it's not a raglan, and maybe it's a circular yoke, but I don't know about this beautiful neckline. It's a V with the shoulders, maybe it's saddle shoulders. Maybe that's what that's called. You're supposed to hold it with fingering and lace. Oh, my hair is caught in my glasses. That hurts. So a DK weight in total. The sample is knit out of alpaca suri, like a suri alpaca silk. Held together with an MCN, so merino cashmere nylon fingering to get a DK weight. The needles used in the pattern recommended are 3.25, and I think that was, what was that? That was a US 3 for the ribbing, and 3.75 for the body, which I think is a US 5. It's recommended anywhere from 1 to 10 inches of positive ease. Again, my preference. In this particular case, 10 is a lot, but I think I'm there. It doesn't matter what I do. I am definitely in the 10 inches of positive ease, but it's very customizable. The yarn, there's quite a lot of yarn required for this pattern. The smallest size is like 980 yards or 890 meters, all the way up to 2050 yards or 1900 meters. So quite a range. So the decisions I made before I started. First of all, I already had decided what yarn I wanted to use. And I could have knit it exactly to the pattern, just holding the super soft with the mohair. Why I didn't do that, I don't know. I just had this thing that I wanted to hold the super soft double. I'm glad I did. It makes the actual yoke pattern pop. So very happy with that. But that meant I'm more of a worsted weight, not the DK weight. This is Linda. This is a Lindaism. I am forever choosing a completely different weight of yarn than recommended. So I went up a needle size, go figure, to 3.75 millimeter and 4.5 millimeter. So I went up, actually I went up almost 2 needle sizes for the body. And so I chose size 4, which I chose the 44 inch, so 4 inches of positive ease versus 10 inches of positive ease. But because I am knitting with larger needles and thicker yarn, I'm still getting the 10 inches of positive ease. It might be even a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure. But this is absolutely a fun pattern. So again, I wanted a smaller neck, so I cast on the smallest size of 120 stitches. I cast on 16 extra stitches as soon as I finished the ribbing. And I love this. I just love the ribbing. I love the fabric. It's amazing. Now, typical me, I didn't read the chart. I got all the way through the first set of baubles in the pattern. And I'm going to try and show this to you a little bit more clearly. There we go. I got all the way to about here before the two baubles. So I got about there. And I knit the whole thing, and I couldn't figure out, I kept looking at the chart, and then I ended up going to my knit group, and I'm looking at the chart, and so I asked them, I said, I'm doing this chart, and the chart kind of goes like this, which makes sense, and it's blank on both sides of that, but way over on the left-hand side of the page, there's this one bar of purl stitches. So my chart goes like this. There's nothing on either side of that, but way on one side, there's this whole row of ... which is purls. And I'm thinking about that, and I thought, actually this is before, so I started thinking about that. I'm like, you know what? I think I was supposed to do my chart but do a purl. So do my chart, my first repeat, but then add this little purl that was way out there, purl it. So I think what I did is I put stitch markers for a 7-stitch pattern repeat, and I think I should have put stitch markers for an 8-stitch pattern repeat. I didn't figure that out until I got past the first bauble. So then before I went to my knit group, then I did the next set, but I started the next row, and then I thought, okay, well, I'll just start adding in that purl row, that purl stitch. I'll just add the 8th stitch in the next row all the way around. Well, actually, no, I wasn't. I was at my knit group, and I thought, okay, so I confirmed with them. They're like, yeah, Linda, you were supposed to put this, your stitch count should have been an 8-stitch count, not 7. That purl way over on the left-hand side of the page actually was supposed to be applied right from the beginning. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go all the way back because I'm lazy. What I will do is I'll start knitting because we're all chatting away. I'll start knitting, and I'm just going to add that 1 stitch in the next row. I'm going to just move all my markers from a 7 to an 8, and I'll add a stitch. I'll make one. And I did that all the way around. And then as I'm thinking about it, I'm going, well, what that's going to do is I'm going to have this circular yoke that goes like this, and then all of a sudden, the next row, it's going to go flat out. So I'll have this nice yoke, and then this edge where all of a sudden I had all these increases in one row. And I thought, oh no, that's not going to work. So I spent the entire knit group undoing all the way back to the ribbing. So that was that was my story there. I misread. I didn't know how to read the chart properly. I didn't recognize that whole row on the far right eventually met up with the top of my chart. And so this side's going like this, and then it eventually meets up with that purl stitch. Where was my brain? I don't know. But you learn something new every time. And so now it is all correct. So now you can see that I've got this purl stitch in between each one of my motifs, which makes me very happy because it's so pretty. And this is Bauble City, man. I mean, I actually like doing baubles. I thought I would not like doing baubles because they take so much time. And they don't take so much time, but you're literally knitting in these baubles 5 times into the same stitch. So yeah, it takes a long time to get through a row. And then sometimes you're doing 2 baubles every repeat. That's a lot of yarn. It takes a lot of yarn and it takes a lot of time. But I found it very therapeutic. So it wasn't bad at all. So what else can I tell you about this? Love it. What I will say about this yarn, and we all agree, it's pretty crunchy. Like, it is pretty crunchy. It is not the softest. It's called super soft. Not feeling the super soft at all. Not feeling super soft at all. But I can also feel the lanolin in it when I'm knitting. So all the experts, Kelly Noel, tell me that it will soften up a significant amount. It won't ever be like butter, but it will soften up a significant amount once it's been blocked. Honestly, I think this is going to block out to be this gargantuan sweater. It's got a lot of positive ease, and it's just going to be this bougie sweatshirt at the end of the day, because like the thing feels huge, and it's taking a lot of yarn. Even the sleeves, like the sleeves are 15 inches as per pattern. They're actually 15 inches. And then I am undecided now whether I'm just going to go straight. These are straight. It looks like it's gaping here, but it's not. These are straight. Whether I'm going to go straight and then make a big cuff, or if I'm just going to let it hang straight. I haven't decided yet. It really depends on the fit of this. And again, I haven't decided on the hemline either. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a split hem or if I'm just going to let it just hang straight with just ribbing. So we'll see. Lots of details to figure out on this. But that's helpful. I don't think that's very helpful. Sorry. Oh my goodness. The problem is I can't see. What can I tell you about this? Nope. Can't think of anything else. I think that is pretty much the gist of it. But anyway, I'm absolutely loving. I hope you can see that pattern in this light. It is just stunning. I love the color. I think it's going to be fabulous. And like I said, it's right now, it's getting all my love. I am just happily knitting the sleeves, and I thought I would do the sleeves before I finish the body so that I know kind of how it's going to hang. And I am contemplating blocking it before I do the ribbing and the cuffs, because I think I just need to know how this yarn is gonna handle blocking. How big is this gonna be? How is it gonna hang and drape? And I think I might block it before I do the ribbing and the cuffs. What do you think? I think that's a good idea. But anyway, loving this, absolutely loving this particular knit. So with that, let me go to my final whip. I think it's my final whip. Is it my final whip? Yes, and it's a shawl. Okay, so my final whip, my third and final whip for today, I think it was 3, is the dotted rays shawl. And this is a great segue into the next section, which is going to be a little bit of a yarn tour, because this project came about, again, because my friends and I are going to flock in September in Seattle. And we also just did a little mini yarn tour, which I'll talk about. Actually, I'll talk about it now. We did a little bit of a yarn crawl, thanks to Leanne of the Knitting Stew, the Knitty Stew. We went to, actually for 2 reasons. One, Leanne from Knitty Stew, which I'm sure you all know and you all watch, did a yarn visit to Trendy or Whatnot in Mission. Okay, we live locally in the Lower Mainland, like an hour away, so that still to me is local. We did not know that shop existed, number one. So here we are, we have somebody coming from Calgary going, oh, I did a yarn visit to this shop, and we're like, what? We didn't even know about this shop. Trendy or Whatnot. Awesome, awesome yarn store. So I've got a little bit of video on that after. Also, one of my knitting friends has been volunteering at a yarn shop, a very little corner yarn shop in Maple Ridge, which is called Once Upon a Sheep. And what's wonderful about that is a charity-based yarn shop. So that is a philanthropic kind of a yarn shop. And we went there to explore that yarn shop too. So I have a little bit of footage on that one. But Trendy or Whatnot, fabulous. Mady is the owner. Mady is a native Dutchie from the Netherlands. So of course we had a good yak about that, which was fun. But one of her samples was the dotted ray shawl, and it was actually knit in a colorway very similar to this. Now this is Sheepya's Whirl, which, where are my glasses? I gotta read this because this is a big cake of yarn. So it's a light fingering. I'm gonna say it's a light fingering. You get 225 grams, which is basically 1,000 meters, maybe 1,100 yards. Is that how much I got? Yeah, 1,100 yards in this particular yarn, and it is obviously a color changing yarn. It's a fade. It's a fade. And it comes in probably 20 different fade options. And so each one of us chose a different one, and we decided we're all going to knit the dotted rays, which has been in my library forever because I'm a Stephen Westie. And we all decided to choose a different colorway, knit the dotted rays, and that was going to be our flock shawl. So, or another flock knit. And this is called Raspberry Rocky Roads. And it goes from and actually the dark black, it started with black. And then it goes to a medium marled gray, and then a light gray, and then a marled gray and pink, and then a baby pink, and then a marled pink and fuchsia, and then to this beautiful raspberry fuchsia color. So this is how far I've gotten. Now, notice, I don't know if you can notice, but there's a whole bunch of speckles in this. That's because we all decided that not only were we going to do that, but we were going to make a tweed. And we got the make it tweed at, most of us did, I had it in my stash, but the inspiration for this came from Once Upon a Sheep. So not only did we get the yarn from Trendy or Whatnot, but our next stop, we ended up getting the make it tweed. And so we have this beautiful combination, making the dotted rays. And this is turning out to be a lot of fun. Why that worked really well is because the Sheepya's is quite a fine yarn. And the dotted rays takes up, the larger dotted rays takes up to 1,200 yards of yarn. But the Sheepya's is quite fine. So when you add the make it tweed, it's the right weight for the needle size. It was a little bit too airy on 4mm needles. I think it's 4mm needles that the pattern calls for, yeah. Which is the US 6. It was a little bit too loopy on its own, but if you do it with the make it tweed, it turns out absolutely perfect. Now, I am behind compared to my peeps, but I'm absolutely loving it, and it is a very intuitive, very simple, easy knit, and it is going to, oh, look at that. Oh, that's going to be around my neck. Oh, look at this. I can wear this. Well, look at how pretty that is with all the grays in that. Oh, there you go, an outfit. Amazing, amazing. So that is my work in progress, and this is just, again, TV knitting. This is great knit group knitting. Because it's just an easy shawl. It's a crescent shaped shawl, and it's going to be very wearable. So looking forward to getting that one a little bit more, giving it a little bit more attention so I can make some progress on it. But those are my whips. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And now what I'd like to do is share with you a little bit about our yarn tour. So what we decided to do was we took 2 cars, because we're a little bit scattered, and we all met in the quaint little, it's not a city, it's probably a city, village, town of Mission. And Mission has a lot of good vibes. I was quite surprised, because I don't know what I really had expected, but they've done a lot of investment in creating an atmosphere in the downtown main street with all the small brick buildings, the cafes, the little boutiques. It's very walkable. It's very shopping, shop to shop kind of idea. It was absolutely lovely. And so we went to Trendy or Whatnot. That's where we stopped first. And then we all had sort of a lunch at the English Tart. What a great little restaurant. And that was Matey's recommendation, the owner of Trendy or Whatnot, because we didn't have that plan. But we figured we would have a quick bite at the English Tart, and their specialty is teas. They serve great coffee, all cappuccino, lattes, whatnot, if you're a coffee drinker. But they have all these amazing teas, from London fogs to everything, but some really unique blends. Each pot of tea is steeped individually. It can take up to 15 minutes to get your tea. Because of the way that they process it. And these are all very, very gourmet flavors. But they also serve like an English tea. So you have to reserve in advance, and they have a couple of seatings where you get, the tiered sandwiches and desserts included with your tea. And I think it's $35 a person, which seems very reasonable. We saw some of the plates coming out and we're like, oh, I think we might want one of those. So we're all going to go back as a group and we're going to have high tea, because it was just so comfortable and so nice. And the staff were absolutely lovely. So if you're ever down by Mission Way, absolutely go into the English Tart and go into Trendy or Whatnot. So without further ado, I'm just going to add some video here, and then we will continue on with some acquisitions.
This is the mission tartan, and it has been designed for mission by this group. It's registered in Scotland. The pink, it is for the humpback pink salmon. The black in the tartan is for the railway and coal mining. The light green is for the fields, dark green for the forest, blue for the sky and water, and western red cedar.
Beautiful. I'm just going to take a close-up of that.
Oh, please do.
That is stunning.
Where are you ladies from?
Say hello.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
And you are the owner, manager?
No, I'm one of the board of directors. Once Upon a Sheep is a shop run by a nonprofit organization called the Shepherd's Heart Society.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I started it in 2000. I opened the shop in 2003 to raise money for the Salvation Army. And then we formed a board, and the board purchased it from the Army, and we've been operating it ever since as a separate entity.
As an independent.
But we raise money from the profits of the store to send children to summer camp every year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And do we know how many children we are able to send to camp every year?
It depends on our profits. It depends on how often people come and shop here. We try to give a little bit every month to their camp fund, about 5% of our sales. And then at the end of the year, if we have extra cash, we give it. Some years we've given them enough for 40 kids to go to camp, and some years we've given them enough for 10 to go to camp.
Wonderful.
So it just depends on what our profits are for the year.
And where do you source your yarn from?
Oh, well, we get it from all over the place. Sometimes we'll have indie dyers in. So we have some yarns from a local woman who does Bramble Ridge yarns. But a lot of our yarns come from distributors here who bring them in from other countries. So we have Katia yarns. They're from Spain. Sorry.
That's okay.
And then we have some yarns from the States. Cascade and Barocco are from the States, and Sirdar's from England. So they're kind of from all over the place, and we bring in, there's a BC company called Gathering Yarn that we started bringing in a couple of years ago, and we get our yarn, it's an Aran weight yarn, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head.
No worries. We'll direct folks to your
You
website.
go down there and look. It's on
and
the
I
back.
will film it.
And on the left.
So this is a full-fledged yarn store, and you donate the profits. How wonderful.
Yeah.
So do you accept donations of yarn, or is that a separate thing?
We do. We'll give them out if we're teaching lessons or something like that, but oftentimes we will then redonate them where they could be better used. So we'll take, lots of people don't know what to do with yarn their grandmother left them or their mother left them.
Right.
So, but there's a senior center, we'll donate yarn to them. They like to knit up stuff for their sales and things.
Terrific. Well, this is absolutely wonderful, and I'm happy that you were here today. So this will get posted on my channel.
Well, don't
but
forget
I'm
to
also-
tell people that Tuesday nights from 7 to 9, we have a drop-in. Yeah, it doesn't cost anything. We just all gather together for a couple of hours every night. And that's been going on since 2003.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, long time.
Congratulations. That's very exciting. You just passed your 10-year anniversary. No, 20-year anniversary.
20, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I can't
Yeah,
count.
21 years. It was 21 years, April 5th.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
well,
so
thank you very much for doing that, because
Thank you.
it takes a village, and obviously
It does.
volunteerism is a huge part of that.
I just wanted yarn close by. I was a Salvation Army officer working 50, 60 hours a week, building a shelter and doing all these things, and I had no time to drive all the way to Burnaby or all the way to Chilliwack for my yarn. And that's where the stores were. And so I was just like, how am I going to get yarn close by?
Yeah.
Oh, I could do that.
I can turn my passion into something.
I could add that on top of my schedule.
When it comes to yarn, it's amazing what we'll do.
Amazing what a person will do to get yarn.
Oh, well, thank you very much for contributing. So I hope you enjoyed that. We had an absolute blast that afternoon, and we finished our tour, like it was just the 2 shops. We were going to go to Black Sheep Yarns in Port Moody. It's all on the same side of the Fraser River, so we figured we'd just drive straight up. But because it was a Friday and because we were getting close to rush hour traffic, we did not relish getting stuck on one of the bridges for an hour and a half. So we called it early at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and headed home. But we will do the other stores at another date. Now, at Trendy or Whatnot, one of the fascinating parts, as you saw in the video, maybe you saw it in the video, was that they are, what do I want to call it? They're sort of a center for the weavers, the Spinners and Weavers Guild in Mission. And they had a whole section in their store, which you probably saw, which was all of their guild products, and any of the guild products that are purchased, the money goes to the guild. And Mady is a huge supporter of all the fiber arts and encouraging that, those skills to be continued. And so I ended up falling in love with the tea towels. I think I have a thing for tea towels. I bought tea towels in Holland that were all beautiful linen dyed tea towels, and now I have purchased a whole bunch of hand woven tea towels. Look at this. This is 100% linen tea towel in a tweed. Oh my God. I love it. That is one. Then I bought 2 of these. Again, these are woven, hand woven. This is a cotton linen blend. Don't know if you can see that in turquoises. I hope the color isn't getting too washed out. This is a color changing yarn on cream, and it goes from purple to turquoise to blue. And it keeps changing back and forth. So I got 2 of those. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, there you can. There you can see it a little bit better. Absolutely beautiful. I got this one, which is another cotton linen blend in beautiful chartreuse and blue and purple. Again, these are all the guild's weaving. Look at that. Look at the detail on the end. How beautiful is that? I could not resist. Oops. And my last one. And these are going to be for our new residents wherever we end up, which is, yet to be seen. But anyway. Yeah, so those are the tea towels that I purchased from the guild, and that was at Trendy or Whatnot, along with the Sheepia's yarn. And then when we ended up at Once Upon a Sheep, which it's fabulous. All the profits, 100% of the profits from that shop go to charity. And it was founded, and I think you met her I can't remember which video I showed, but a senior individual in the Salvation Army opened up that shop as part of her retirement. And the shop is doing really well. And I purchased some, and these are yarns that I've never seen before. So this is Katya. But this is called United Socks, and it is 75% wool, not merino, 75% wool, and it feels woolly, and 25% nylon in a white, because you always need white for socks. So I bought a couple of these, and they were only like $4. And I think you get 110 yards there. And I also bought 6 of these, and these are the Lazy Hazy Summer Cotton, and this is a cotton acrylic blend. But I had so much fun knitting this and enjoying wearing this so much, I thought it would be fun to make another tee, like just a tee. And I'm thinking, oh, is it the V-back tee? Is it called the V-back tee? In just this beautiful variegated summery palette, which I just love. Does this palette have a name? It's 145. I've got to stop doing that. 145 meters. And no, it doesn't have, it's a Rico yarn. Does it have a number? Well, if it has anything, I can't see it. It could be number 9. Number 9 or number 14, I'm not too sure. But it's made in Belgium, but I just love all of those happy, happy, happy colors. So bought that. So those were my acquisitions for the yarn tour. Aside from that, aside from all the things I've cast on, I have to admit I have cast on something else, which I'm not going to show you today because I'd be talking forever. But also, when I brought those yarns, what's next on my needles, I guess, what I'm casting on, well, I've already cast this on, but I'll show it to you next time, is one of the yarns I was going to destash was this. And this is Malabrigo Rios in the fuchsia colorway. And I hope you can see that. It's a fuchsia colorway. What's a good rendition of it? I don't know what's a good rendition of it. Oh, that's probably pretty accurate. And it is a worsted weight yarn. And nobody bought it. So yay, as I'm looking at it going, oh, please don't buy it. I love this yarn. Why have I not knit with it? So I cast on using these 2 mohairs, silk mohairs. So this one is Rowan Kid Silk Haze, which is a 70/30 mohair silk. And this Drops Fuchsia, no, Drops Pink. I think this is just called Drops Pink. It's just called Pink. Drops Pink, which is a 75/25 mohair silk. And I decided to hold these together because I wanted to heather this a little bit. I love fuchsia pink, but I wanted to heather it just a little bit, give it a little bit more interest. And so I will show you in my next video what I'm working on with these beautiful, beautiful yarns. So that is a next on my needles. Another thing that is next on my needles is this yarn. And this yarn is Copper Corgi. And this is a dyer out of Florida that we met at, it was a pre-Maryland Sheep and Wool event on the Friday. And I'm trying to remember what it was called. Fiber Optics, Fiber Frolics, Fibrations. I think it was called Fibrations. There you go. And this is the Shoreline Silk. It is 100% silk noil, and it is called Low Tide. Look at that. It is a sport weight, and I am going to cast on, and I'll show a picture. It's called the Urchin Tee. So that is my next cast on as well. I have not cast this on yet. So this will be a new cast on, which hopefully I will get started and be able to share a little bit of that with you on the next video. Anyway, so that is it for the knitting. I hope you enjoyed that. I had a super, super fun time sharing all my knitting adventures with you. Thank you for those of you that don't want to stick around for the chatter. And honestly, there's not a lot of chatter. So if you tune out now, awesome, wonderful, see you next time. If you're sticking around, just a few highlights. So you know we're going to flock. Yes, we're going to flock. Very excited about that. We are also going, as part of flock, we are on the Saturday night going to the Donny Osmond show. We're going to have a blast at that. That's not until August though. And it gets a little bit, timing wise, I get a little bit, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening, because houses for sale, as you know, no, it has not sold. No, there's not a lot of interest. Just the market's kind of slow. Things are moving, but just, I don't know. There will be a buyer. We're not in a rush. There's no immediate plan. There's no urgency, I guess. But my hands, this is why I'm trying not to show my hands so much. I've been cleaning so much, and every single week that my hands are, I swear my fingers are going to fall off. But it's a little stressful just having to keep the house so clean and not notice I've added a little junk already to my craft room. But trying to keep it clean and pristine and in showing condition has been a bit challenging. But that said, it's all good and it's all self-imposed, so I got no complaints. Summer is coming, so I have starting. So starting is a position on a golf course. You have a course marshal, you have the starter. The starter is the person where all the golfers, they first go to the clubhouse, the pro shop, they check in. Once they've checked in at the pro shop, they come out towards the first tee where the starter will be. The starter is the person who manages all the groups teeing off to make sure the pace of play at the start of the game is managing smoothly, just welcoming everybody to the course, just covering off some of the rules of play, proper etiquette if you're new, that kind of thing, answering any questions about the holes, if there's any special conditions on the course that day. So that's what I do as a volunteer at one of our local golf courses. And for that, I get free golf. So it's not altruistic on my part, not at all, but I love doing it. I love the people. I have a hoot. I do it every Saturday. So this Saturday is of course, by the time you see this, yes, this coming Saturday, you may see it. July 8th, I think it is Saturday. It's International Knit Public Day. So I will be bringing my knitting to the course, and tentatively the plan so far is for my knitting group to come to the golf course because it has a restaurant and sit outside and heckle me as a starter, but knit on the patio. So we'll have to see if that turns out. I hope it does. It'll be kind of fun. And it's supposed to be absolutely brilliant, brilliant weather. So for June, that's kind of a miracle all on its own, and I'll take it. What else can I tell you? Nothing else is going on. And maybe this is a question I should ask you. Do you have any guilty pleasures? And I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure or if it's a stress management technique or method. I have gotten completely and utterly obsessed with a YouTube channel called Cheap RV Living. So this is a channel that I have been watching now for quite a few months. The founder is Bob Wells. And this is a channel of all sorts of people from all walks of life who are living in small spaces like a van or a small motorhome or their car. They're camping or they're living, one of the two. They're either living in it because they have to, or living in it because they want to, or camping out of it. But it's either a van, a car, or a small RV. And I do not know what it is about that, but I have been redesigning my Acura. I'm just going, I could fit a bed. I could put little fairy lights everywhere. I can put a fake plant over there. I could get a cooler and a fridge. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. My husband's like, there is no way on, God's green acres that you are going by yourself out into the forest and hanging out in your car. And I'm like, why? It's not dangerous. It's very safe. Apparently it is very safe. It is actually a very safe thing for women on their own to do, just in case you're thinking about doing it. But I'm just fascinated by this channel and I watch all the videos. So do you have a guilty pleasure, or something that you watch that has nothing to do with knitting, nothing to do with our wonderful fiber craft? I would love to know, because I think that's very interesting. I can't be the only one that gets, down a rabbit hole of something totally unrelated to your life. So, I know some people watch The Bachelor, or their guilty pleasure is Survivor or whatever, but this is a YouTube channel that I have just gotten completely hooked on. I highly recommend it if you're into that. I have never been camping. That's not true. When I was a child, 4 years old and younger, my dad used to take us camping, but I don't have a lot of memories of that. As an adult, I have not been camping, not really camping. So I think I have this thing where I would like to commune with nature and be out in the wilderness and just be communing with nature in a very small space, namely my car. So anyway, on that note, I will let everybody go. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. I hope I kept you company while you were crafting, and I hope you are all doing well, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.